Sup nerds, Tom here, talking about Bitoku, and I'm going to be intentionally brief, at least when I'm talking about like the mechanics of the game, because I recorded a video earlier where I got really in depth about the game, and it was like almost 40 minutes, and I was like, yeah, I'm not fucking editing all that. But the one thing I do want to mention before we really get started is while this is a pretty heavy game with a lot going on, I've heard a lot of people compare it to like one of those upper echelon super heavy games, you know, like a Vital Lacerda game type thing, and I really disagree. I'd compare it a bit more to something like, I don't know, Pulsar 2080, I can't remember the numbers, but Pulsar, the Luvia project, maybe that comes to mind, maybe like Gugong with the expansions. I mean, if you're going to compare it to a Vital Lacerda, possibly Escape Plan, which is like one of his lightest games. But again, there's a lot going on here, but it's just mostly because of options. The core of what you're doing is pretty straightforward. There's just tons of different tokens out there that give you little special abilities and little bonuses. So that takes a while. But really, you're either going to play a card, play a die onto the board like a worker placement thing, or move that die from one worker placement spot to like another kind of, and that's pretty much it. Now every round you can only ever play a maximum of 3 cards, place a maximum of 3 dice, and move a maximum of 3 dice. So you'll have at most, 9 turns per round. There's 4 rounds of the game, so math. And most of the actions that are listed on the cards or listed on the worker placement spots where you're going to place your dice are gaining these little tokens that are bonuses. Really, like the whole bottom third of the board is just a bunch of these tokens that give you bonuses in different ways. Okay, like the building tokens will give you bonuses when you go to the worker placement spot you put the building at. These tokens will give you bonuses every time you play a card next to it or something. These tokens, well, this one doesn't do anything and this one doesn't do anything, but when you get the top half and the bottom half and you put them together, that gives you some bonuses and stuff. Now, if that bottom third of the board is all the bonusy tokens, the middle third is most of the worker placement-y stuff, and then the top third is kind of like this track you move upon, or I think it's more of a path, right? It's like a bi-directional path, and then you can also have one on your player board with these cards that go off to the side, and moving your tokens up along that path, either up on the top of the board or on the side, will give you bonuses and points. A lot of those tokens on the bottom third will get you points. Upgrading things on your own player board, like for instance, whenever you place a building, that'll give you points. A lot of the cards you play can get points, and actually like you start with some sort of starter ones and you can purchase better ones from the board in a somewhat deck building way, but it's really minor. It's just like getting a couple of cards. I mean, I guess if you go heavy on that strategy, but still it's definitely not, if someone were to say that deck building even is a mechanic in this game, that's a real stretch. 2 things that there aren't really a lot of in this game, but there kind of is a little bit, is player interaction and overly complex rules. So player interaction, probably one of the main ones, is whenever you place your die out in a worker placement fashion, the number on the die is important. The number on the die showing will affect like how strong you get to do that action, like for instance, how far you get to move on the path if that's the worker placement spot you placed it. But also other dice that get placed there that are a lower value can't actually perform one of the actions. I think they can perform the building action, but not the main board action, or vice versa. I can't really remember, but it definitely is limiting. And when somebody gets a 6, a lot of the times they will forego using that 6 to cross the river to take that other action because they usually drop down to a 3. So 6s are obviously really strong and almost a little broken. I mean, yeah, they have to lose an action, but it might be worth it to just, if you're going first the next round, just completely block out a spot from anybody else who doesn't have a 6. And that also makes the modifier tokens, which there are tons of dice modifier tokens in the game, and those are super strong. And then when I'm talking about the complication of the rules, like there's nothing really fiddly too much. Like, okay, building tokens, hey, you take the tile, you put it over by the worker placement spot. When somebody places there, they can do that bonus, and if they trigger it, then you get a little bonus too. Cool. Hey, these fish bonus card things, if you complete the little things on there, you get the points. If you don't, you get the negative points over here. Probably the clunkiest rule would be like the end game scoring tokens that you place on your board. They don't really do any multipliers by themselves. If you get these other tokens and place them next to them, then that becomes like a multiplier type of thing. It's something that it's easy to forget, especially when you're calculating out and trying to do a million different things with all your turns. And it's one of those games where there are so many little combos and little bonuses all over the place that you can look at the board and say, what if I did this? And you have this big long chain of events to try and get to what you want. Like, what if I did that? And you have this long chain of events to get to what you want. And then you stop and you go, wait a minute. One of these plans included a modifier token. How was I going to get that? Obviously, I thought I could get it somewhere, but where? So obviously, this isn't Baby's first game, but if you've played heavier Euros, you're definitely going to be able to get it. It's tons of mechanics you've seen done before. I mean, I think it's done pretty well. I really enjoy the game. I think it's very point salady, crunchy, lots of combos. That's a big deal. I mean, the lack of player interaction is a little bit of an issue. Like, I mean, a lot of Euro games are that way, but this one's it really feels like the player interaction is just the ultimate fuck you action. Like, yeah, other Euro games, the player interaction is, I got this thing before you did, but this player interaction is, I placed a die here and you cannot. Well, I mean, I guess you can, but it really screws you over if you try to do this one thing because I placed this die there first and I have that die. I have it. I have a 6. I mean, you can try and get a 6 and still go there, but that's going to take a while, ain't it? So I do really enjoy this game and I do recommend it for most players who enjoy the heavier side of Euros. The only caveat really is, like, for me, because it's so heavy, but not necessarily up in that upper echelon, I wouldn't put it with my Lacerda games. And actually, in terms of really heavy Euros, you know, this one's definitely knocking at the door of that type. I already have, you know, a lot. I can't have 50 heavy Euros. I mean, I'm never going to get to play all those. This one, I'm definitely keeping it. But I do suspect that there's a possibility that this might be one of the ones that hits the chopping block in a year or so from now. And I don't even like saying that because, again, I like the game. I do enjoy it. But it's just a problem I've been having recently, especially since I've been moving a lot and I've already culled my collection like 3 times. I'm actually starting to almost enjoying culling my collection, which I know sounds weird, and I never thought I'd be saying it, but the idea of cleaning it up and getting rid of games that I like and enjoy and maybe would play again, and now I look out at my collection and it's just the bangers, just the great ones, just my favorites are out there, you know? And I mean, maybe if I play Bitoku a couple more times and I end up chopping some other things, sure, maybe Bitoku will be my favorites and it will stay in my collection, but it's kind of teetering just because it's really good, but I don't know, it doesn't have that spark. I don't know. Well, all right, those are my thoughts on Bitoku. It gets a very high recommendation from me, really, really high, just a hair below being perfect, and I love it, and it's the best thing in the world. So I give this one an 8.75 to Rapples.
A plumbus! That's 6.5 Rapples!
But anyways, normal end of the video stuff. You should definitely check out Game Toppers. They're our sponsor, and I'm certain they're loving the fact that recently we've just been kind of throwing them a quick aside in our videos instead of doing a whole big sponsored thing. So I'm going to fix that right now. Game Toppers. Game Toppers. Game